On this episode of Scammer Stories, if you're listening for the first time, my name is April, and my mother was a victim of a romance scam before her death at the beginning of the pandemic. I started the podcast years ago because at the time, there was very little information online, and I needed to understand what happened to me and my family. In the beginning, trying to find people to interview was tough. Most said first, "What's a podcast?" And then they'd ask, "What's a romance scam?" I had to cast a very wide net all over the world just to be able to cobble together enough interviews to keep going. And finding scam victims who were willing to grant interviews before I was established was tough. It has taken years for me to earn people's trust. Many of the podcast reviews have asked for more episodes more often. I've always wanted to, but tracking down men and women who were willing to talk and had the time at times was close to impossible. Unfortunately, these days, I don't have to search very far to find people whose lives have been affected. Every time I attend any kind of social event, someone always ends up pulling me aside to tell me they too have a loved one who's being scammed. Many of my best friends are now dealing with the nightmare of an older loved one who's been taken advantage of. That's where we'll begin with this guest on this episode. Now, I'll keep her anonymous because not everyone in the family is 100% okay with airing the story. But you will be able to tell from our conversation, though, she is one of my besties. I'm just going to start with, you've had a couple different issues with some older family members. So let's start with what happened with your grandparents.
Yes, sure. So the year that my grandpa passed away, a few months later, and my timeline could be fuzzy, but it was within a few weeks, couple months that my grandma was prospected by somebody. Next thing our family knew was that we were getting notified that my grandma was sending money to somebody. I think it was in New York. There ended up being an entire ring.
How'd you get notified? Like the bank?
Yes. So eventually, she did send some money, but the time that she wrote a $95,000 check, the bank intercepted it. We are from a very small town, and thankfully they notified the family that this check had been written. And so I have three, my mom and her two sisters were able to kind of collaborate and figure out what was going on, talk to my grandma. My mom went and got her and moved her into their house for a period of time. And my grandma just kept talking about how in love with this person she was and that he needed her help and that nobody had any right to interfere in this situation.
Now, what did he say he needed help with? What was his reason?
I don't recall the exact scheme that he had in mind, but I know that she was sending money to another woman who was then sending it to another woman, and then somehow it would get back to him. So
he had money mules.
Yes, there were mules involved, and whatever it was, obviously it was a large amount of money, and she was willing to send it. And when they moved her here, she was mad, and my mom actually took her cell phone away from her, and she drove herself. She was elder, but still driving at the time, to Walmart and got a burner phone, and contacted the gentleman again. And it was very hard for her to break that relationship. She and my grandpa had been married over 50 years, and he had just passed, and this came into her life, and this
gave her happiness. So she fell in love with this imaginary person,
yes,
and then had to break up, go over that heartbreak, and then she fell in love with another imaginary person all over again, and had to go through all that all over again.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't it sad? It's the worst. It was heartbreaking to watch.
So how'd you get her finally to stop then?
It was a tough love situation. They broke all communication. And finally, after a little period of time, I would say maybe a week or two, it started to kind of make sense to Grandma why there was intervention in this on on this situation and on her behalf. And she promised to never reach back out to him and didn't. And some of the family members became involved in her finances at that point.
So they could monitor her more closely.
Yes. Yeah.
Which can be a full-time job in itself.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're all busy.
Yeah. And I mean, they were successful farmers for a long period of time. And I mean, obviously there was some funding, and it's just scary to think that all of that could have gone to somebody that wasn't part of the family or deserving or anything.
Okay, so recently, I knew about your grandma, but recently we got together and you said that your mom has been vulnerable recently too. Not necessarily a romance scam, something a little different.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
Yes. So first of all, we've gotten it shut down, but not without other heartache. However, my mom went to an event, and she was intrigued by red light therapy. And as a result, she allowed herself, although she's been in a happy-ish marriage. I mean, yes, but marriages come with ups and downs, but happy marriage for over 40 years. She fell in love with the man that sold the lights, and she started buying very expensive red light therapy machines. We are not certain who was the person reaching out. I'm sure this man was very happy to have the sales, but she would reach out to him on a more personal level. She created an Instagram account so she could follow him and kind of stalked him in a way, and was reaching out to him on a continual basis. And the reason I don't feel like it was so much him scamming her was because he provided a product. And when we contacted him and asked him to please leave her alone, he respected that.
Oh, he did? Okay.
There was another instance that she reached back out and he said, "Your family told me to leave you alone." So she got really mad at us.
Okay, that's what I was thinking about.
And we had to have the conversation with her, telling us that we had no right to be involved in that situation, and that she was going to be shutting it down, although she hadn't, and that she had a very obsessive behavior with that man.
With the man, because she was getting attention. Those endorphins were going. What did your dad say?
You know, he just wanted it to stop. My dad's pretty much, I want to use the term Switzerland, in that he didn't want it recognized, but once we all knew about it, he was very hurt. But he didn't ever vocalize that to us. He's very good to my mom. And he was very happy that we intervened and put a stop to it.
Now, but you have known that I've been doing this podcast for a while. And now that you've been through two kind of similar situations, describe the frustration that you've been through.
Oh, I don't know that there's much more frustrating than being told by our mom that we had no right to get involved in that.
My mom said the same thing.
And we were able to tell her that that is our job, to be involved and to intervene in these types of situations. It's just, it's like dealing with an addict, and them enjoying those endorphins and not seeing clearly. It was very frustrating.
Now, when you and we've been talking about this for years because we've been friends for years, but remember when I first started this podcast and we were talking about it, like you having a grandparent that had been involved in a scam it was kind of rare knowing someone who had been involved in a scam. Right. And now you and I are texting each other and talking every time we see each other. Did you hear about so-and-so? They're getting scammed. Like I used to have to reach out to people across the world to find scam victims. Now they're all around me.
Oh, all the time. My mom the other day was like, "I made a new friend." I don't know if I've told you about this. And we're like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, her name is something and she lives in New York." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "She texted me today and asked if I wanted chicken for dinner." And I started laughing and told her this stuff. They text all day long. And by the time she told us about it, we were like, "Mom, that is a scam. And you have to erase her number right now." And I actually stood over her until she did. And she was mad. She's like, "Well, not everything is a scam, you guys." And I said, I know that, but this is. And you just have to trust us, which is so hard. Like we're sitting here telling people that are getting attention and having a day filled of texting her new friend in New York. And I'm like, you cannot do that.
Okay, so I've got another friend. You've met her before. Her mom is probably about 90, and she loves Donald Trump. And she thinks that she is communicating with him.
Oh, my God.
And writing his speeches. Oh, that's a tough one.
Maybe she is sometimes, but
I'm like, I got to see these speeches. They might actually be good.
What?
But my friend is so frustrated because her and her sister get together and sit her mom down. Mom, you are not talking to Donald Trump. He does not need a speechwriter. He's got them. He's got the best. He's got the money for the best.
Oh, but it's heartbreaking to see these people being preyed on so much. I mean, my mom also got a text one day. She's a text. She is bait. I mean, like, she is prime bait too. So, like, we have to keep an eye on her. But she was like, well, I'm about to head down to Dollar General because I have to get these gift cards and send a code.
Oh.
And we're like, shut it down.
Send to who?
Who knows? Like, have you heard of the one where you have to, like, go get gift cards or something and send them a code so that they can get the money? She was.
Send them codes.
Thank God she decided to include my dad in that conversation and took him with her. And he's like, we are not doing this.
Yes, you've got to listen to what your elderly parents are saying.
There's so many things.
Did you see the video of the 92-year-old woman at the mall recently? Okay.
No.
There's a woman, white-haired, 92 years old. She's got a bucket full of money, and she goes to the Bitcoin machine at Woodland Hills Mall in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, my gosh.
A 20-year-old kid sees that she's got a bunch of cash she's putting into the Bitcoin machine. So he goes up, knocks her out. She's got stitches. She broke her arm. I'm waiting. If they're still looking for that suspect, I know who he is. But as soon as they arrest him, I want to talk to police. I can almost guarantee you that she went to that mall because a scammer had told her how to do Bitcoin.
Yep. Absolutely. I actually did see the news footage. I did not watch the video because the headline was 92-year-old gets beat up. And I'm like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But it absolutely had to be. No 92-year-old is on their own trying to figure that out. And a bucket of money.
Yeah. It has to be. Probably 90% romance scam. It could be another kind, but either pig butchering or romance scam.
Something. It's so sad. And it's so everywhere. Like you said, we have to listen to what they're saying because, and these are the chatty ones, you know, some people are just doing that and not saying anything.
Yeah. Well, that's what my mom used to say to me is when I would start questioning her, I'm like, Mom, you're talking to a scammer. She would say, I'm going to shut down and not tell you anything anymore if this is how you're going to treat me.
So sad.
And so you go back and forth because you want them to talk to you.
Right. That's how I feel with my 12-year-old. He tells me something's funny and I tell him, no, it's not. I want him to still come to me and talk to me, right? But kind of tell him it's not. And it's the same, you know, they're telling us, well, I'm just not going to tell you anything.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe we got to take your phone. You're not prepared for this technology. But it doesn't have to be elder. I mean, it can be, I know a friend that in his 40s had a scam come through on his computer and they were gave him all their banking information, everything.
Well, now they're targeting the younger people more.
And they're crafty.
Especially since the pandemic. The younger people, when they weren't going to school, they were isolated. That's why the elderly people are targeted. So it's the same thing.
That makes sense.
So you target lonely people.
Right?
And these kids aren't out socializing, and it makes them an easy target.
Yeah.
Scary.
It is. I'm glad you have a voice with it.
Thank you.
Help spread awareness.
Thank you for coming in and talking.
Thank you.
So I mentioned earlier that I now get approached in my day-to-day life by people I know compared to years ago when I had to reach out to strangers. Some of those strangers, though, I now call friends. That's actually how I ended up on the board of advocating against romance scammers and going with them to Washington, D.C. Ours was one of the only advocacy groups on the internet when I first started. So I reached out to Brian and Kathy, the co-founders, for one of my very first interviews. I remember we all struggled to find a good time for an interview with both of them on opposite coasts and me in the middle. That seems like a long time ago now. By the way, I posted an article from the LA Times after they recommended ours recently for scam victims. That's huge. More and more national media outlets are finally taking notice and really taking advocacy groups seriously. So The good news is more people are reaching out to me. And the bad news is more people are reaching out to me. I predict that the number of people being romance scammed is only the tip of the iceberg with what we're about to see with the advance of artificial intelligence, and really no answers on how to solve this problem in sight. We've covered a wide gamut of possible solutions on this podcast, but everyone has a different idea on how to fix it. And right now, there isn't any type of plan for any line of action, whether that be from social media, the banking industry, law enforcement, or Congress. I recently got a message from one of the victims and authors featured on the podcast, and she says she's going to fight for changes to tax laws so victims don't get hit with owing money to the government after a scam. I like that. I'll keep doing this podcast for as long as people will listen. I may not have the answers, but I can provide a sounding board. So, on another note, I teased everyone recently about a couple of big announcements, and then things changed, and I needed to keep kind of tight-lipped. I will say that I was supposed to go to court to witness a scammer accused by several women who found each other from one of the episodes on this podcast. All of the women were scammed by the same man who does live in the States. So I was packing up for California when I heard the in-person court case was basically not going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that the case is over, though. I'll release more when I can. Exciting things are happening, but still so much to do in 2025. Pig butchering is what's really growing the fastest now. It's really growing by leaps and bounds. So I shared a piece of audio from TikTok from a pig butchering scam victim that shows the raw emotions that victims go through. I shared it on Facebook, but many of you are uncomfortable with TikTok because of all the China concerns. So I want to air a portion of it here for you to hear. It's difficult to hear and to watch.
Raw and uncut. I just had to calm down to make this video. If you were the victim of a romance scam from Hinge or any of those dating sites and you need support, this is for you. Because I'm in the same boat, and if you want to leave a cringe comment, go ahead. No one cares. Let's get on with it. I was the victim of romance scam on Hinge. It just kind of happened on Friday, and I'm just honestly trying to take it day by day. Met this man, talked for months online, no mention of any type of trading. Inevitably it comes up. I tell him, good for you. I don't have that kind of money to invest. Like, congratulations, you know? This man offers to front me the money to trade. All seems fine and dandy. I can see all my transactions making money. I still see the funds in my crypto wallet, which is even more taunting because it hasn't technically been stolen from me, but the exchange is basically charging me 10% of total assets to quote unquote unfreeze my account because I've had fraud protection or fraud on my account because of this deposit this man made, and all of my assets are there. I'm left with nothing. I am about to lose everything in my life. So made all the reports. Thanks, guys. I reported them to the SEC, FINRA, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, California Department of Financial Institutions, the International Cyber Crimes Unit, the Chinese consulate, like you name it. I'm not going down without a fight. So we're working through this, and I just want to let you know that, you know, I am lucky enough to have a supportive family who, you know, they'll talk some shit, but they'll be there for me in the end. But if you don't have that, I'm here for you, and let's get through this together. And I'm going to document this, even if it's just for myself, because I just need to know that I didn't go down without a fight, and I'm sorry. I'm hurt. You know, you work hard for everything, just to have it taken away from you. And, well, I'm here for you guys, so if you want to stick around for that. Oh, fuck, sorry, I had to calm down. But, you know, if it just reaches one person, you know, even if you do your due diligence, this can happen to you. So you're not dumb. Don't be ashamed. Stay tuned.
I reached out to her for an interview, but she politely said no, she wasn't ready for that, and that's totally okay. She recently posted a video update. She says the scammer stole money in the six figures, and she has now hired a bankruptcy attorney. She has a long recovery road ahead of her. If you have a story you'd like to share, email me at scammerstoriespodcast@gmail.com. And if you have a minute, leave a review, please. I've received some good feedback, both good and bad. Keep them coming. Until next time, Scammer Warriors.